What's up, golf friends? This is Jim Colton, and this is the Driven Golf Podcast. We've got a special guest here today for the opening tee shot, brought to you by our friends at Strakaline. We've got Justin Bardgett. He's back. We had him back in episode 22. You know, he is the director of player relations and PGA Tour Pathways. This is very, very timely because if you've been paying attention to the news in the golf news, PGA Tour announced some changes to the PGA Tour U program. PGA Tour U accelerated. I think it's very timely. Like, we just had Luke Clanton playing in the Sony, with he had potential to actually earn his PGA Tour card in that tournament last week. And, these big names coming out of the amateur scene, there's going to be guys that are playing college golf right now that are going to be on the PGA Tour and the Korn Ferry Tour in just a few months' time. And I think as a golf nut and as an amateur golf fan, you're kind of like the cool kid getting in early on these names. So Justin, I just wanted to, spend a few minutes to talk about just how this all comes about. It's like this program has evolved, it's been, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now. And each year it seems like there's new twists, new turns, new wrinkles. What does that discussion look like? How many months, does a process like a change like this take place before it's actually formalized?
Yeah, Jim, no, I appreciate you having me back on the podcast. Excited to visit with you. But changes like this, I would say our PGA Tour University team, we pride ourselves a smaller group, but we pride ourselves on kind of trying to stay in tune with what's going on in the college market, the amateur market, the junior golf market, listening to the parents, coaches, players that we talk to, and really trying to take feedback and kind of formulate changes to the program, both the PGA Tour University's ranking and accelerated, in ways that ultimately just make our product, our platform better, right? We want to be as efficient and effective at kind of slotting players into the proper entry point into professional golf. And I would say it's kind of a nonstop effort, right? We have conversations all 12 months of the year. Whenever we feel there's something that could be done to benefit our program, we go through the appropriate channels within a massive corporation that is the PGA Tour, and fortunate to have a lot of support of the program and to just kind of keep chipping away, hopefully getting better each day.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think if I'm reading between the lines of the changes, I think they're largely a function of the program has had demonstrated success, right? So it's, in a lot of ways, I think it's probably likely a function that the proof is in the pudding, that these college players are coming out of school, or even while they're in school, they're proving that they're PGA Tour ready. Even all the way down the list. Like, I think about like Johnny Kiefer as a perfect example. We had Coach McGraw on recently, and he like barely qualified for the last spot based on his performance in the postseason last year. Got into the Americas Tour and won the America Tour Point Series, right? And now he's on the Korn Ferry Tour this year, and it's just like he proved he belonged in this short period of time. And I also think of Carl Phillips, who he was the number 1 junior, like highly recruited, had a very good career at Stanford, but wasn't really super high on the list, and he had tremendous success right out of the gates. And we've seen this, for a number of years now, guys coming out and winning right away in Korn Ferry. So I think that's probably has to be really rewarding. Is sort of, maybe you have your doubters and you have to navigate sort of the system within the tour. You've got tour vets, and probably they don't necessarily like guys taking their spot or more spots being given up. And there's, like we talked about last time, there's trade-offs involved. But given these guys continue to have success, it seems like the writing's on the wall. Like, we need to continue, adding to the system.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on. You're spot on there, Jim. It's a little bit of a modernization of the entry point from college golf, even with the global amateur pathway from amateur golf into the professional world. Into the professional golf world all over the world now. But yeah, some of the examples you gave, I would say when I started with the PGA Tour about 18 months ago, it was a little bit still in, I guess, the validation phase, if you will. And now, I mean, you rattled off Phillips, you've got Ludwig out there, you've got Thor Bjornsson, who's had a great kind of first 6-7 months. Kiefer, right? We've got Sandy Scott, who comes through Americas. The examples keep going and going. Matthew Riedel goes a little bit of a different path and gets through Q School. So it's been fun to see how the program's been embraced. And I would say that the play of the guys who have come through it just kind of continues to show how good college golf is. I mean, you hear Nick Dunlop talk about it. You hear Luke Clanton talk about it. It's just kind of really, it's been great to see how much people have leaned in and really embraced that. Let's take this. I don't know if you want to call it a pipeline, but let's take the best from college golf and let's get them into our system and let them go and move up efficiently and effectively with good play.
Yeah. So let's talk about the added benefits. I want to focus mostly on the Corn Ferry piece of it first, and then we can talk about accelerated. Because I think the one challenge that I saw with the current system is that these guys are, they're finishing school, early June or whatever, and they're being thrust in the Corn Ferry system, and they're trying to like basically retain a card or advance to the PGA Tour when these guys have had this huge head start on them, right? So you have these guys are basically playing almost every week on the Corn Ferry Tour, try to earn as many points as possible, try to make it to their postseason. But now it seems like not only have you granted additional spots, I think with the expanded benefits, but then also this point system within a point system, which allows guys to keep their Corn Ferry start. So what was like the motivation behind that?
Yeah, I mean, you look at we kind of talked through some of these names. Carl Phillips was 10th in the points list. He ultimately ends up getting a start in Colorado through a sponsor exemption qualifier, and obviously from there we know what he did. He goes top 15 to finishing runner up at NV5, winning, I believe, in Utah. And you just look at the depth of the top 10 in college golf. So we kind of thought it was the right access point for that group. To be able to, from the national championship, you take numbers 2 through 10 in the ranking, and let's get them in the field each week into the open full field Corn Ferry Tour events. Then to your second point here, which is a little bit more of inside baseball, but it's something with our PGA Tour University total points. It's a way for the university class, and even it's all the way through the top 25. It's a way for those guys to compete against each other in PGA Tour and Corn Ferry Tour points to retain status the next year onto the Corn Ferry Tour. So it's actually Matthew Riedel is someone who told me about, I think in his 5th or 6th event, he learned about the top 3 rollover that was in place. And he's like, this is probably one of the greatest things that nobody knows about. And, fortunate for him, I believe he finished 76th or 77th on the Corn Ferry Tour points list in, like you said, that shorter window, it's a really strong season. I think he almost won in Colorado. But then he was second in the points list behind Carl Phillips. And so he had status for the following season on the Corn Ferry Tour. Obviously, he didn't end up needing it.
Yeah.
But it kind of turned into an interesting race down the stretch with Christo played a couple PGA Tour events in the fall. And it was, I believe he made the cut at Sea Island, and it was only a couple strokes from where he would have overtaken Greaser. Again, Christo goes to Q School, though, and earns Corn Ferry Tour starts back. So he's in a good position as well. But the enhancement, when we went to the top 10, ultimately after, kind of talking to different people, felt like we had to give him a fighting chance to retain into the next year. So that was just moved from top 3 to top 5, which we think just provides a great avenue for guys to be able to, extend that window of opportunity.
Is part of your job as player relationships basically being the expert, subject matter expert in this area and explaining all of these nuances? Because even like the Corn Ferry, the reshuffles and all that sort of stuff it's often difficult to figure out what's going on.
Reshuffles still kind of get me, so I don't tend to be an expert in the priority ranking and how fields work. I've learned a ton in the last year in this player relations role. I'll tell you, guys become a whole lot more interested in the top 3 rollover when they're competing for it and when it kind of affects them directly. I mean, I would say that's like a lot of things in life, but I do my best with, all of the guys on the Corn Ferry Tour Americas to give them as much information as they want, whatever it's surrounding, right? If it's where you are positioned in a reshuffle, it all comes down to at the end of the day, playing really good golf, and everything else takes care of itself. And that's kind of what I love about golf and the PGA Tour is that there's nothing that can stop you.
Yeah. So let's shift gears. Let's talk about accelerating. So I think there's some exciting changes there. Like the points have changed, and I think they've been sort of balanced. The one thing I noticed through this is maybe more like sustained excellence is being rewarded. I think and also this sort of proving that you can compete to win actually on the PGA Tour event is being rewarded, where, like Luke Clanton is, I mean, from my opinion, is, probably should be on the PGA Tour by now, but the point systems didn't necessarily fully recognize the fact that you got guys competing, finishing runner up in PGA Tour events. That didn't really happen in the past, right? So when you guys were calibrating this, I'm Justin Thomas and other Patrick Rogers, I think you mentioned, like they weren't following the Luke Clanton path. And Koiven, has just as many points, but he followed this sort of excellence in the dominating the college golf tour and accumulated a ton of points that way. So it seems like now you've calibrated that, hey, there's different pathways even within the accelerated system to actually get to that 20 points.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think what you said was sustained excellence or sustained high level of play is probably putting it better than I was going to try to put it. So it's a redistribution is what I kind of look at it as. There's not any more points available. They're just available in different ways. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, what do we do for 12 months a year and how are we paying attention to the marketplace? I probably didn't have Luke Clanton finishing top 5 in 3 PGA Tour events on the radar in 2024. But when he did it, we did feel like we should make sure that the point values for, honestly, those type of performances, is commensurate with the rest of the system. And it's a balancing act, right? With where guys choose to play, the playing patterns, what they want to do with their summer schedule. I think I would tell you, we're not here trying to advocate for every junior and amateur to chase PGA Tour Open qualifiers or chase PGA Tour sponsor exemptions all year. I don't think, I probably believe that's in the best developmental route for a young player. But at the end of the day, if you're racking up top 5s on the PGA Tour and we're trying to identify elite talent, you should probably be awarded for that. So,
Yeah.
That was a great addition. You talk about, we added the Jones Cup, the Southern Amateur and the Northeastern Amateur. You look back at the last 10 years at who's won those tournaments, and it's remarkable how many of them are on the PGA Tour, and the ones that aren't are still very, very, very competitive on the Korn Ferry Tour. Sustained success, I think, probably can't be indicated any better than staying number 1 in WAGR. So 26 weeks gets you a point, 52 lifetime weeks at number 1 in WAGR. Again, if you go on WAGR's website and look at who's been able to hold on to number 1 for that long, it's a really good indicator in our opinion. And then you look at our Super Bowl, so the NCAA Championship.
Mm-hmm.
We felt like there needed to be something outside of winning for a really strong performance that week. So we put a point for a top 10 at NCAAs. And then, like you mentioned, obviously those points had to come from somewhere. So there was just the other events that we were rewarding wins for. We just knocked down a point and it kind of balanced itself out really nicely.
Yeah. I mean, and when I saw that, like there's, winning the US Amateur goes from 3 to 2, but then you get a point for being in the major, which like winning some of these tournaments, like they get you into these other tournaments and other opportunities. So like winning the US Amateur, especially if it's in a Walker Cup year, like you're stacking points from that,
Yep.
from that one event, and deservedly so. But I think going from 3 to 2 is not really an indication around any sort of indication about the U.S. amateurs or its strength. Like obviously it's the top of the list, but it's just that the reality is like there's other opportunities that come along with that.
100%. Stacking points is exactly what we call it. And you look at, if you win the U.S. Amateur, which is extremely difficult to do, and one of the pinnacle achievement in amateur golf, you're going to get berths into the majors. In a Walker Cup year, you're getting 2 points there. So it's much more valuable than a 2-point win, and
Yeah.
we definitely value that.
Yeah, and I like I said, this it's interesting time now because you've got Gordon Sargent and you've got 2 other guys that are right on the verge, and this was really only meant to sort of recognize generational talent. We're in this period where you've got guys that are just like phenomenal talents. It's just a really exciting time to be an amateur golf fan, and I think it's these create interesting wrinkles. Like maybe when you designed it, it wasn't really meant to create storylines. It was just meant to identify these players. But I think like we said with Luke Clanton last week, like there was a narrative going into that tournament which added interest and intrigue if you're really paying attention, and that's been really cool to follow.
No, absolutely. And I mean, you look at the names that would have achieved accelerated. I mean, I think we have to keep in mind there would have been a handful more had they known that they could get to 20 points and unlock a PGA Tour card or PGA Tour access. So I think it's hopefully changed amateur, junior, college golf for the better. I sure believe it has. And hopefully it's just going to keep getting better. And we think this points kind of change will help us to stay modern with the changes.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the insights, and as you guys make changes, we'll continue the conversation. I did want to get your perspective as we shift gears, because this episode 36, we've got Coach Ryan Hybl from the University of Oklahoma. You used to be a coach at the University of Illinois under Coach Small. I imagine you cross paths with Coach Hybl quite often.
Yeah, we did. I believe they beat us in the quarterfinals of the 2021 national championship. So I know Coach Hybl well. I've had some good interactions with him. Ton of respect for what he's done at OU. I actually was very fortunate to get pretty close with Max McGreevy last year on the Corn
Hmm.
Ferry Tour, and what a great guy, what a great competitor. Him and Quade Cummins. They sing very high praises of Coach Hybl, and you look at what he's built there, and a lot of respect for his, I'll call it competitive intensity, which is pretty similar to my mentor, Mike Small.
Yeah, and we're talking about two Hall of Fame coaches here, so hope folks really enjoy that interview. And then we've got the segment with Andrew Lewis on angle of attack. I think this is probably another subject that's near and dear to your heart. Is we talk about just being a mutter, like playing in these really kind of crummy conditions in the winter here in Texas, which is like dead Bermuda, muddy Bermuda, heavy north winds. I have to imagine, I lived in Champaign for 4 years of my life, but when you were coaching there and just knowing what I know about Coach Small, I imagine he really embraced that, like the shoulder season and really just the opportunity to really round out these players' skill set and sort of embrace sort of these really kind of less than ideal conditions, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess to take a page out of Coach Small's book, it just builds toughness, right? I mean, you go out there and you get some work in on a muddy, cold, 40-degree breezy day, and you get done with your work that day, and there's a sense of accomplishment, right? You feel a little bit better, a little tougher. You're that much more prepared for when those conditions do come. And I will tell you, professional golf is fortunate. We kind of chase summer everywhere we go, but there are still plenty of days where it's nasty, it's cold, it's windy, and just some good old toughness kind of goes a long way. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, you got to embrace it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if you had that mindset and you have that discipline and you've put in the work, like basically you could take half the field and just like toss them out the door, right? Like because they're going to mentally kind of check out or whatever. You just feel like you're much better prepared. Maybe that's part of the reason the formula of success that Coach Small and others like Coach Hybl have had. It's just they seem to sort of run to that toughness, right? Run to the tough conditions.
Yeah, I bet Coach Hybl would probably say similar to Coach Small. That all that Coach Small used to be looking for was he's like, give me a tee, give me a hole somewhere out there. I don't care what the weather is, I don't care what the conditions are, and let's just go compete. So
Yeah. All right. Well, Justin, we really appreciate having on. Just jumping on real quick, and we're just really excited to follow the Corn Ferry schedule as it's getting up and running this year, and obviously the guys have graduated on the PGA Tour as well.
yeah, thanks, Jim. I appreciate your support of the PGA Tour, our pathways, and PGA Tour U. So always happy to jump on and chat with you, and all the best.
All right. Thanks, man. Take care.
Thanks.
Coach Hybl, welcome to the pod. Welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah, we had you on the 2025 class 2025 signing special, and that was really cool. A lot has changed just in the past few weeks. You've been a busy dude these last few weeks. I know it's the off season for your Sooners, but you just got back not too long ago from Las Vegas. And when I talked to you last time, you weren't a Hall of Fame coach. Now you are a Hall of Fame coach, so congratulations on that. This very, very richly deserved, and that'd have been just an awesome experience.
Yeah, it truly was. I mean, I actually just it hit me this weekend probably more than anything. 3 or 4 days back at the house, everything's kind of happening fast. The last month and a half of the season, even though I knew we were going into the Hall of Fame, special, but it's like it kind of didn't feel right. I'm pretty young in my career still, even though I've been doing it for a while. Age wise, so it kind of felt a little awkward there, and then finally going out to Vegas and being around everybody and being around my family. It was a special week for my family, which they've been there from the beginning. And one of the coolest moments too. My golf coach Chris Hack, who's still at Georgia. He was also my first boss in the coaching industry when I was the assistant there at Georgia. He basically passed it on and inducted me into the Hall of Fame. So really special for him to be able to get up and speak. And he's the chairman of the Hall of Fame committee, so that's why he was up there. And just the connection of he and I together, it was really really special. I knew I was probably going to get choked up in my speech. There was just so many people to thank and talking about my team and whatnot. But he kind of broke the seal early for me. Right out of the gates. And now when the seal gets broken like that, it's hard to recover. So I had a tough time spitting out my words, but man, we had a great time last week.
Yeah, we saw the social media post. First of all, like him calling and telling you had made it, like that had been a really special moment. And we saw, like you just posted not too long ago about that experience. You cleaned up pretty well, I got to say. That was great to see you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah,
Yeah.
my wife makes sure that I look the part, and no, it really was a special week. And just seeing everybody, guys that recruited me in junior golf that I've coached against or with. I've been in the game coaching for about 20 years, but some of these guys I've known, for 20, 25, 28 years. And, I told all of them, I just have had a front row seat to some of college golf's greatest coaches and just walking down the cart paths with, Bruce Hepler and John Fields and Mike McGraw and guys that are iconic coaches in our sport. I couldn't thank them enough. It's really been a great run for me. But the great part is, I'm hoping that we got a long ways to go and
Yeah.
opportunity, continual, growth within our own golf program. And but yeah, it certainly was a special week.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I know a lot of your former and current assistants were there too. So you've had a career now that where you have your own coaching tree, and the guys
Yeah.
have gone on to do big things as well. So that's pretty neat to see as well.
Yeah, I mean, the things that really fill my cup now as a coach, obviously, the day in day out stuff with my own guys it really hasn't changed, and I get really juiced up for our day to day stuff. But on top of that, now as you get older, our former players, coming back, watching them, have their own kids, being successful professionally. Forget about even golf, just professionally. That's the kind of stuff that fills my cup. And then also, seeing our former assistants go out and do their own thing. And I started with Blake Smart, who took a chance. When I first took over at OU in 2009, we were ranked outside the top 100. And so we were down at the bottom of the barrel. And he was the head golf coach at Kennesaw State in Georgia to come out and be an assistant at our place. And we, just dug our heels in and did everything we could. And he was with me for 5 years. And he didn't get a chance to probably see as much fruit of the labor because we won a championship a couple years after he left, but he was a big part of that. And he was there. And then Jim Guerin came to us from New Mexico. He was with me for 3 years. He won a national championship while he's here. And that was when we really started to kind of, take off as a program in that 14, 15 area. And then, Bill Alcorn, who's now at TCU, he was with me for 6 years. And when Bill was here, we're coming off of a national championship, and we were able to win several conference championships. So they all kind of came at different points in my life, which is really interesting. Change is really good for all of us because, these guys make me that much better. And I'm hoping that I've been able to pour into them too along the way. And so change is a really good thing. And now I've got Jonathan Moore and Ryan Rayner, both our associate head coach and assistant coach. And they are just absolute studs in everything that they do. Super elite. I mean, I've got the best staff in the country. There's no doubt about it. People can say that left and right, but I know that we've got the best staff in the country, and we bring it every day, and we just pour a lot into our guys. So anyway, that being said, to kind of wrap it into a bow, it was fun to be able to have all of my coaches there. And I think we're going to do something pretty fun here in Oklahoma at some point for all of our former players, and because again, we're not here without our guys and our players. I mean, they are, they are truly the bloodline of what allows us to be, who we are, and just thankful, grateful for the types of guys that we've been able to recruit and wrap our arms around. over the years. I would say that by and large, we're not sitting there over the last 16 years now here at OU. We haven't had a bunch of 5-star guys walking around, and that's probably my proudest moment standing up there on that Hall of Fame speech. The Hall of Fame, when you think about it, and I'm sorry I'm long-winded here, but it's usually individual accolades, right? That's what gets you into the Hall of
Yeah,
Fame.
sure.
But for us, I've been at Georgia for a couple years coaching. We had great players there, but this was more of a program award. Thinking about how long I've been here at OU now and where we've come from and where we're at. And I'm just so thankful for our program getting recognized like that. And it just, the amount of people and the players, it all works together. And again, just truly thankful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think it's, like I said, it's very richly deserved. And I think it's a function, I think, of this like sustained excellence that you guys have been able to achieve under your watch. And I think, in college golf, especially, like a lot of it can sort of ebb and flow with the players that you have. Like you might strike lightning in a bottle with a couple of guys and be good, for 3 or 4 years. But if you don't have that program, built like brick by brick where you're able to kind of keep that sustained success, a lot of those times kind of fizzle out and teams kind of go up and down based on the players that they happen to have. But if you have a program that's like consistent in terms of what you're about and, you just have this excellence. And I think you guys are a perfect example of just like, making the championship, making match play probably as much as any other program since it's gone to match play. And I think that's a testament to everything that you said and everything that you bring to the program.
Well, I appreciate it. And, it's just been a constant build. If I had inherited a bunch of, 5-star studs walking around here, I don't know if I would have been, who I am right now. I think what we inherited was exactly what we needed. Truly trying to change, what Oklahoma golf was about. And, like you said, brick by brick, we tried to do that early on. Our very first year here, 2009, 2010, I actually shared this story. It's a pretty good one at the Hall of Fame. Mike Holder, who's a good friend of mine, he's a mentor. I've looked up to him. He recruited me, and he actually tried to hire me a couple different times to go to Oklahoma State. But we're walking around the back nine, the Big 12 championship at Whispering Pines my first year. We're about to finish 10th place out of 12 teams, And I had a BlackBerry in my pocket at the time, but that was back in 2010. And I looked down, it's a message from Coach Holder, and he goes, "Man, y'all aren't very good. I thought you were going to be better than this, Of course, he knew how to dig at me, and he knew what I was about. And the interesting part about that is, on the way down to that Big 12 championship, I had to stop at a Dairy Queen in the backwoods of Texas to make sure I grabbed a phone call from Abraham Answer, who committed to us on the way down to that
how about
tournament.
it? Yeah.
It was down between us and Wichita State. Okay, junior college. He was at Odessa Junior College. It was his freshman year. He had won 6 times that year, junior college player of the year. But that phone call was enormous for us because Abe was truly one of the biggest pieces of the turnaround and made us look like we knew what we were doing by continuing to get better and better. Then we could recruit better players, and that's how the snowball allowed us to be where we're at. And another year after that, Brad Dahlke as a 12-year-old commits to us, and Brad's just a bona fide Sooner. He's Sooner born, Sooner bred. And there was no other place he was going to go to, and we were able to recruit good players even before Brad showed up here. And anyway, my point of that story is just, and this is what I said at the Hall of Fame, you're only one guy away. In our sport, you're only one guy away. And for all the coaches out there that are, needing that hope, that is my hope. That's the great hope for all of us, right? You're just one guy away. And that guy, he was special for us. And, to this day, I mean, he's on the Live Tour now, but when he left, he was a top 20 player in the world. And I'd still put money on him every time.
It's interesting you say that, because I think if listeners are, we have a lot of young listeners and their parents as part of this podcast, and and kids want to be part of a program, right? But there's also like this opportunity and maybe even responsibility that you could be a program changing type player that also, like you said, attracts other recruits, and just about how you carry yourself and how you lead by example, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's like, regardless of where this program is ranked, and like there's been a lot of changes, right, in the college golf landscape. We'll talk about that later. Maybe kids are going to a second tier school that they originally weren't planning on going to. Like there's no reason that you couldn't be sort of that first brick that leads to them being, a title contender like Abraham Answer did for Oklahoma years ago, right?
Certainly. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at that, right? And, now we're in a different spot where we feel like we're competing at the highest level every year. And so now my message is completely different, right? We evolve and we try and figure out like what our goal is. And way back when, this is where we always felt like we could get to, and that is trying to. Now you're talking about iron sharpens iron, right? Because in theory, we want the best players around the best players every single day, because we think that that's going to allow all of us to continue to rise, right? But there is that side of the equation that you're talking about as well, right? Where you go to a program that maybe is looking for that guy. There's no doubt, in my opinion, Division II golf is getting ready to explode and get way better here in the next 2 to 3, 4 years, just because the spots are going to be limited. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but I would say this: when it comes to recruiting and parents, you're still looking for the right fit. When it comes to coaching styles, you really need to know what you're getting into. Facilities are extremely important in our sport, based on what you're looking for, but it's not everything. I mean, some of our best teams back in the '80s still practiced on a baseball field, right? Todd Hamilton won a British Open in 2004, but he was part of that crew in the early '80s where they're still hitting to trash cans in the center field of a baseball field. So you can still go dig it out of the dirt, kind of wherever you want to. But I think the connection with, when it comes to coaches, teammates are going to kind of ebb and flow, come and go. So again, I think you got to be careful there too. But for sure, the coaching piece, the relationship side of things, where do you want to get your education, right? I mean, nobody even talks about that anymore. It's like, what happened to our system? I mean, my goodness, I can't even keep up with football right now. I'm a big football guy, and I actually was just talking to our new offensive coordinator this morning, and holy moly, it's kind of just amazing. I'm not kidding. But you've got to evolve or you die, right? And so it's just a really interesting world that we're kind of living in right now. But uh, I still prioritize, the right fit is still what everybody should be hopefully looking for.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I wanted to switch gears a little bit, because I think the other thing that you have that's could be instructive to young golfers is you were in these shoes when you were coming up. You have a very unique perspective, because you were the AJGA Player of the Year, I think, in 1998. Number one ranked junior in the country, very highly sought after by the best of the best teams. Ultimately, you decided on University of Georgia, but I think you have a lot to offer in terms of, what that's like coming up. I know AJGA, they just posted something about your Hall of Fame thing. And one thing I read that was interesting, they said you had played in like 50 AJGA events, which I don't think is humanly possible now. But that had been a very interesting time, because I know you were also a multi-sport athlete, playing football as well. Like,
Yeah,
if you had to compare sort of that time, like when you were coming up versus like when you actually started coaching, and then now, like those three time periods, is it vastly different?
The nuts and bolts have not really changed very much at all. Back when I was junior golf, first of all, we could play as a 13. Well, I guess you can now too, but they had 13 and 14 division age group Okay. And then you had to bump yourself up into the 15 to 18 age group. And the young kids couldn't play with the old folks until you actually reached 15. So I played in a few 13 to 14 age group tournaments. Actually, I can remember my very first one was still at Bellefonte Country Club up in Kentucky. I think it's the longest standing AJGA.
Yeah, they still play there, right?
As a 13 or maybe 14-year-old, but I was able to win that first one, and that got the momentum. I talk about momentum a lot, and I've been fortunate in my within my athletic world, and hopefully even in coaching as well, to where you're always trying to get on the good side of momentum and stay there. And I was able to do that as a young golfer. I was still playing multiple sports at that time. Football was probably still my favorite sport, but I was playing basketball still. Um, but then as time went on, you could just see, I could feel that golf was going to be the sport that I was kind of thriving in. I was doing really well, and but getting back to your AJGA question, I mean, we only had, I think, let's call it 1997, 98, we only had about 25 events throughout the country. You had your couple majors, but it was so hard to get into a normal tournament. Every event felt like a major.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, like, for instance, I can remember when I won my very first big AJGA, it was called the Polo AJGA in Jacksonville, Florida. And now people would think of that as a regional tournament, but back then it was, I mean, it felt like a major, and I mean, it was such a big deal to win an AJGA, and you were judged back in those days. We had bag tags, and the really, really good players had a thick stack of bag tags because it was so hard to get a bag tag in order to actually get into a tournament. Um, it would be similar to what you would probably think of just the invitationals now. Like if you go play up in New York in the match play event, well, that means you're a really good player. You're one of the upper echelon junior golfers. If you go down to the Thanksgiving tournament, the Thanksgiving tournament was going on when I was playing. It's the same tournament, right? So again, the nuts and the bolts haven't changed. What's changed is they've given way more opportunity. They're up to 140, 150 events. So it feels watered down for an old school guy like me, but you have to look at it differently. Those local events are a little bit more of just qualifiers, okay? The just standard open events to get you up into that upper echelon events that is similar to what I grew up playing in. So it's still a tiered system, and they do an amazing job. I had 3 AJGA guys that actually that I played under, and then they gave me my first job coming out of college.
Wow.
Stephen Hamlin, who's still the director, Mark Oscarson, and Jason Edson. All 3 of those guys were there back when I was playing in 1997, 98, 99. And they were at the Hall of Fame dinner sitting with our tables. And I can't thank them enough for showing me, and forget about my playing days. For anybody out there that maybe when they get done playing college golf, or maybe even if you don't play college golf, if you want to go work for one of the best organizations in the world, I'm talking about in the world, okay? The American Junior Golf Association will teach you things that you cannot imagine. The small details that I talk a lot about with my guys, with my team. Um, that's what they preach day in, day out. If your banner is not perfectly strung, I mean, you better figure it out. If that cooler isn't dialed in perfectly, you're gonna have to figure it out, right? You have to learn leadership skills at a very young age. You're managing people. It's an incredible organization. Nonprofit, junior golf, you can throw that out the window. I'd put the AJGA executives and their branch, their network of people against anybody in the world. And you're certainly lucky if you ever get a chance to work there. So anybody that's looking to get in the golf world, don't be afraid to go hop on that bandwagon, and it'll teach you some great stuff.
One thing I think I read that you were, I guess they have this player rep, which sort of, they nominate somebody within a class or whatever to sort of represent the players and be sort of a go-between. And, that's probably a responsibility that probably 95% of the kids wouldn't want to have. But like, is that something that you embrace? And ultimately, I think probably a lot of that is related to what would make a good coach, like just being able to relate to people and really talk to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to go back to my days. I mean, uh, the responsibility was awesome. I got to go to 4 different board meetings throughout the year. It was with one of my best friends who was a girl golfer from Indiana, Leanne Harden. And back then, I mean, they only chose the best. Forget about the people. I mean, you had to be an upper echelon player to serve on the board, and because that's why we were there. We were there to listen, to hopefully give input. But you're sitting there with some of the best leaders in the golf world at those board meetings. So are you kidding me? I went to La Jolla, California for a board meeting. One of the reasons why I went to the University of Georgia, 1999, the second quarterly board meeting was at Hazeltine National in Minnesota, and the University of Georgia won the championship. And I went out and watched on the final day. Okay, so I'm going to the airport. The Georgia Bulldogs are basically right there, having the greatest time of their life. Throwing the trophy around. I've known all of them forever, and it's one of the reasons why I went there, because I felt what they felt up at Hazeltine, but a lot of that's because I was on a player rep for the AJGA.
Oh, that's kind of neat. I did want to talk about your University of Georgia days, because I think obviously you're from Georgia, and that had to have been a big reason as well. But also, people are probably aware, like, I don't know, there's probably more current PGA Tour players from University of Georgia than any other school. If that's not true, they're up there, up near the top. And I know some of those guys that were right around the same time that you played. Kevin Kisner, Bubba Watson, Eric Compton. So you guys had to have been just absolutely stacked. That'd have been a pretty interesting, qualifying and practice day in and day out.
For sure, yeah. I mean, back then we were basically rolling in the AJGA Player of the Year every year. I mean, it was incredible. What Coach Hack and Jim Douglas, who's still the assistant there, who's my assistant, I mean, they just do a great job of recruiting. They kind of get out of your way, let you do your own thing, and they're great recruiters. And I mean, I was on. Bubba was actually my freshman year. He was a senior. He didn't even. I mean, he was basically our sixth man. Isn't that hard to believe?
Wow.
But he was a freak of nature, and we could all see it. But what's interesting about Bubba, and I'll talk about this real quick, he was always, to me, way more talented than all of us. But in college, he hit this massive hook, like the shot that he hit to win the Masters in the playoff. He grew up playing that shot. Okay, that was like not a hard shot for Bubba to be able to see and feel it. But when he was in school, he had a hard time controlling his golf ball, right? And the ball was working really hard left to right. When he left school, and he, if you're not making cuts, if you're trunk slamming it, you're not making money. He figured out how to hit his driver with a cut, and it totally changed his life. When it came to golf, he started, because he was always longer than everybody. Now he's putting it in play. He still kept with a little tight draw with his irons, but his driver and his 3 woods and things off the tee box were a little bit more of a cut, almost slice at times. And I went back. He and I played on an alumni 2-man best ball deal that they do every other year. This was several years ago, but it was when Bubba was like number 2 or 3 in the world at the time. I've never played with a number 2 or 3 ranked player in the world in my life. I've played with a lot of big time players. I shouldn't say that. Maybe one other time in my life, but when we got done, and I still got game. I'm sitting there. I'm not kidding. I'm like, this guy, I've never seen anything like this before in my life. It is so much better than anything I've ever seen in my life. It was incredible. And it's been fun to watch him over the years. But I mean, so many great players. I mean, Kevin Kisner was right behind us, and Brendan Todd, Chris Kirk were 3 years behind me. But whenever I started coaching, we had Brian Harmon and Russell Henley, who's one of my favorite guys. Him and Harris English came in together as 2007 graduates. I think of everybody in high school graduation years. But yeah, Harris English and Russell Henley. I mean, two of the best guys of all time, and they've had such high level success. But a great run of players for sure. And Athens is a phenomenal place, and it was a great place for me to be. And we had some great time for sure.
So let me ask you this. So someone who's the number one recruit in the class, I'm assuming you had aspirations of playing professional golf, and I know you're All-American, earlier on in your college career. Was there a shift and where like coaching sort of became more in focus for you?
Yeah, you see me started getting out. I need to take my jacket off. I'm getting hot. No, I was talking about my golf. Yeah, no, I mean, I struggled. I struggled mightily. My last probably 15 months of school. To be honest with you, the more I've been able to dig into my history and my past, I was probably burnt out. I was a multi-sport athlete, and for the first time in my life, college was the first time I did something just singularly focused. And I did not do a very good job of managing my time there. I just dug myself into the dirt time and time and time again. I'm a hard worker, by nature, and I dug myself into such a deep hole that I couldn't quite wiggle myself out. I probably needed a little bit different team I didn't really have any type of instruction. Me and my dad worked together throughout my life, but I also at some point probably needed to break off and do some of my own stuff so I could make it be my own. And I didn't do a very good job there. And I got married right after school, so there's pressures there, of understanding, hey, it's not just me now, it's somebody else. And it just was time. It was time in my mind to move into something different. I felt like coaching was always going to be something I was really interested in. My dad was a high school football coach, so I kind of grew up in that world of coaching. I grew up in a locker room my entire life. Whether it's in other sports, sports are still sports for me. And, people will say, well, golf is so individualized. Well, I feel like we're different. We try and not be as individualized in certain areas. We try and, of course, there's things that we do, within our program individualized, but so much of what we do is team driven. So that's what kind of led me down that path. But when I was at Georgia coaching, you probably don't know this about my career, but I got back into it. I mean, the reason why I left coaching in '07, or I'm sorry, it would have been '08. I basically went to Q school. I had gotten my game back. I had found the love that I had kind of missed, and found the love of playing golf again, for the game that it was. I dug back in on some amateur golf. We lost in the finals of the Mid-Am in '06, and we tried to make another Walker Cup run as a Mid-Am. It didn't work out, but my game was back where it needed to be. And so I turned pro as a golf coach, went to raised all my money, did the whole thing. And this was when we had already had our first child. I was like, this is our time, and my game was ready. And I go to Q school. I miss out on second stage, but I go to the Hooters Tour, which was a big deal back then. I win the Q school there. I get into the Korn Ferry Tour event in Athens. On a sponsor's invite, I top 25 it. That week though, I could feel some things going on in my right elbow. And the next week, I go up to Virginia and really tore up my elbow big time. And about a month later, I kept playing on it for another month, and kind of blew it up. Had surgery on it twice, and I had to, I couldn't do it. I had to get back. I had a family, so fast forward another 10 months. That's when I took the job at OU, and so it's not that I didn't want to give it a shot, because I did. I don't feel like I gave it a great shot, because I only played pro golf for 4 months before I had to hang it up. And it's just, it wasn't my time. That's all I can say. It just wasn't my time. And my calling has been to come and lead these young people. And I try and help them, not fall into some of the pitfalls that I did. And I just talked about it, when you talk about burnout, I try and get my guys to do some other things outside of, what we're doing, and making sure that some off days are like truly off days. Let's let's go do something different, get your mind off of, the game. And right now off season is off season. So I'm hoping my guys come back, really refreshed, because we talk about that quite a bit.
Yeah, I do notice that, just, following your social media accounts, just a level of camaraderie, or just like shooting hoops in the driveway, like that sort of thing. You guys definitely have a great amount of, I think, really good balance between the golf stuff and, like you said, getting after it in the gym, but also, doing fun stuff, going to the football game, et cetera. So yeah, I think that's great. I mean, if you look back, I mean, like you said, it's sort of been your calling, and you're pouring into these guys to give them opportunities that maybe, just wasn't in the cards for you for whatever reason, but you're doing everything you can to help set them up for success. And we'll talk about some of the guys that have gone on to bigger and better things coming out of your program. So you mentioned getting the OU job in 2009. We had Coach McGraw on in the last episode. We got like 2 back-to-back Hall of Fame coaches. This is we're right in the wheelhouse. This is great. But he mentioned how he had a role, like he was trying to interview you for the Oklahoma State job as an assistant, and then at the same time the OU thing came together. Right, this had been a pretty crazy deal.
It is crazy. It's so crazy to think back to it. I don't go backwards very much. And this past week with the Hall of Fame, I've kind of had to go backwards and think about some things. And it's been fun to get some of those memories back up. But yeah, I mean, we thought this was when I knew that I was getting back into coaching, because I was a bum tour pro for 4 months and surgeries, and it's I've called Coach Holder. I said I need a job, and he said, just hang on, I got you one coming. Donnie Darr at the time was one of the assistants, and he was about to get the Ohio State job, which was his dream job. And lo and behold, they're going to have a spot. And I mean, to the point where my wife had already bought orange stuff. We don't own any orange stuff.
Yeah, where is that? Where is that?
Georgia Bulldog, red and black, right? And we, everything around our area, the Florida Gators, the Auburn Tigers, the Tennessee Vols, Clemson Tigers, everybody's orange that we didn't like, and we had already bought some orange stuff. That's how serious this deal was happening. I actually had come out to Oklahoma on an interview, but they had already kind of somewhat, potentially made a move to go down a different path, and us golf coaches communicate, so I knew what was going on there, and some things fell through, and before you know it, I get a phone call the day before I'm going to Stillwater to do my official interview with Alan Bratton and Mike McGraw and Mike Holder. And, I'm going to be a Oklahoma State Cowboy probably that next day. And sure enough, me and my wife were at the movies, and I looked down and there's a phone call from the Oklahoma AD. And so I'm like, wow, this is kind of wild. And I go outside and I'm like, hey, I've got plans tomorrow. I'm going to Stillwater, and this was Larry Nafy. This wasn't Joe Castiglione at the time. This was my associate AD, who's still my guy now. He's like, well, it sounds like we need to move kind of quick. I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm going out here on this trip, So anyway, long story short, I go out to Stillwater, spent 2 days with those guys, and then Mike McGraw. This is how good of a guy he is. He drives me down from Stillwater, Oklahoma to Norman and drops me off. Joe C. had picked out a place called Jimmy's Egg. It's right on I-35 in Moore, Oklahoma, because he didn't want people to see us, and not that anybody would even know who I was at the time anyway. But anyway, he dropped me off, and the rest is history, because that afternoon I took the Oklahoma head job.
That's amazing. That is absolutely incredible. I think for listeners, even myself, like, because of the sustained success that you've had over the last 15 years, like, we just assume that OU has always been good. And you're sort of maybe a victim of your own success from that perspective. But that wasn't always the case, right? You mentioned Abraham Answer and these program changers, but when it came to like this job and turning this thing around and building a program brick by brick, like we said, like, you had to look for certain players that sort of fit your mold. I think your personality, your thumbprint is all over the program. But I think the players really have to own it at the end of the day. So, like, what was that process like just getting this thing off the ground?
Wow. I mean, that's a great question. And you know, it is interesting because one of the things I was blessed with when I got here, we had great former players. Uh, there's certain programs that you could take over that they might not be very good currently, but they also maybe don't have a foundation. I actually had a foundation. The teams in the 70s and 80s, and Charlie Coe, who's one of the best
Hmm.
amateurs of all time, um, his name was on our building. His family was still supporting, our golf program. He had won 2 U.S. amateurs. I mean, there was a foundation there. We just had struggled as a program for about 10 to 15 years prior to us showing up here. So it was a serious, lull in the program. And, whenever we took over, we just, man, it kind of came back to those small details that you're talking about. I mean, why is our facility not better than what it is when we can control some of this stuff? We're going to rip this carpet out. We're going to do this. We might not be able to do everything all in this first year, but let's keep knocking out. We're going to redo this green. Our range balls need to be different. All these little small details to make sure our guys knew that, hey, we're serious. Our expectations are really high about how we look. We come to the golf course dressing the part. I don't like guys coming to my place with t-shirts on and untucked shirts because you know what? We're not playing golf like that. If you go play Live Tour, maybe that is where it's at right now, right? But at our place, that's what we do because on the first tee box, usually everybody's looking the part. So we started out there. We started out with our workout program. We started out with how we qualify and go through the day yeah, I mean all those same early principles we still do even to this day. I feel like I'm pretty consistent. I think if you talk to my first couple of years, my guys would tell you that I've gotten soft, and I don't think that's true. I'm just different. I've just evolved, and yeah, we do things very very similar. I mean, I told the same story out at the Hall of Fame this past week. Ben Blundell, first year, he's a senior. I mean, I'm only 27. He's 23, right? So there's not too much of an age gap, but he knew that I meant business, and we set the tone very early on. What we were going to be doing, what we were looking for, the types of attitudes we were looking for, and Ben was phenomenal. He was a great leader. I wish I could have had him for another couple of years afterwards. Um, but anyway, he always tells this funny story about him going to workouts. This was back when we used to work out at 5:30 in the morning because we're going to instill discipline, and little did we know then that extra probably 2 hours of sleep might be a little bit more helpful for our guys in college. So things have changed there a little bit. But uh, he's riding down Jenkins Street and getting close to the stadium, but he's going too fast because he's running a little bit later than what he should be. And all of a sudden, he looks up in his rearview mirror and it's in blue lights. Right, cop pulls him over. It's probably 5:25 in the morning, and cop comes up and Ben tries to play off as being the student athlete. Hey, sorry, officer. I'm an athlete. I'm going to workouts. Blah 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 blah. And officer goes, well, you're going too fast, brother. And I was like, yeah, but I got to go. I got to get to workouts. Got to get to workouts. And he goes, well, I can tell you this much. I can give you two options. We can call your coach, or I can just go write you a quick ticket. And he said, well, you don't know my coach, so you probably just go ahead and step on back there and write that ticket. uh, because he knew that it was going to be a tough conversation if that cop called me. But anyway, he ended up getting there on time, and he loves that story. But it just, we set the tone, and, we had tough times like every program does, setting the tone like that early on. But man, it really worked itself out, and our players really rose to the occasion. And that second year, Jim, we're sitting there at the regional championship at Virginia Tech with a team that had really duked it out all year long. This would have been spring of 2011. That was my second year. And all of a sudden you look up, we finished third at that regional championship. And we made our first national championship it had been several years. And it was at Karsten Creek. We didn't belong, but we certainly we set the tone for the rest of what history has made for us, because that next year we made it without thinking about it, and we're at Riviera in 2012, and we should have made the final eight. That's kind of in our third year. There's no doubt we were inside the number pretty much the entire final round, and that one kind of slipped away from us. But in 13, we were right there, and 14, we were right there. So all those building blocks then led to our very first match play that we made in 2016 out in Oregon, and we got beat by Texas. But that year set us up for 17, and there's no doubt in my mind that team in 17, they were as ready as any team that we had, and a lot was because of what the guys did in 16.
Yeah, I wanted to go there because you mentioned Brad Dalkey. You said he committed when he was 12, like in the very, very early days. He was on this championship team in 2017. And I do think the one thing that you mentioned is, I mean, this is instructive for juniors that go through the ups and downs of tournaments and maybe losing in a playoff or giving away a tournament. Like, you can use that as an opportunity to make yourself better. And when you're next time you're in that situation, like, you're all the better prepared to take that on. It sounds like, the setback of losing to Texas, like, that had to sting, right? I imagine in 2016, but then to go through in 2017, I think you guys beat Oregon in the finals, but like, what were some of the more memorable moments, and maybe some of the unsung heroes that just like the players involved during that run?
Wow. I mean, they all did their part. That's what makes the championship team be championship. That week in particular, all five of our guys were elite in their own way. Riley Reinertsen, who's still trying to play now, he was unbelievable that week. Grant Hirschman, who just finished, I think,
he made a run.
This week, he was phenomenal. And Max McGreevy, that was his last tournament as a senior, who's back on the PGA Tour this year. Obviously Brad Dalkey, he did his job. I mean, I put Brad always in the back of our match play lineup because he was our best match play player. He was phenomenal. And then Blaine Hale. I mean, Blaine, we threw him out first against Norman Zhang. Mm-hmm. You guys remember Norman, right?
Yeah.
You remember the name anyway. The guy was the best of the best. And Blaine absolutely hammered him and did an amazing job getting that point on the board. But they were championship. And I'll even go into my sixth man. It was a guy by the name of Quade Cummins, who, by the way, is on the PGA Tour this year. And it probably changed Quade's life being there, and he never put the tee in the ground. I brought him up there because that was our first year of subbing, and I thought that we might end up using him in match play. Quade's a nice match play player. And but he was such a great teammate and brought the momentum for the rest of the guys. And I will tell he would probably tell you the same thing. It changed his life and changed his golf career because he, at that moment in time, he was like, I'm here. I just won a championship, but I want to be the guy that wins a championship, like what Brad did, like what Hirsch did. And from then on, his mentality was completely different. And to this day, I don't know, McGreevy, him and Quade are similar, that they're not going to quit. And I mean, they're such bulldogs. And Quade, he learned a lot that week. And so my sixth man was hugely important that week, and he never even played for us.
No, that's fantastic. And there's probably a lot of six men thinking that they should be in the top five, right? And they carry themselves with that sort of chip on their shoulder. But it sounds like he really contributed to the team dynamic. I wanted to go here because you mentioned a lot of names that are either on Korn Ferry Tour, very, very close to the PGA Tour. Blaine Hale was on the PGA Tour last year. I wanted to bring up a couple of your guys because I think each one has probably a slightly different perspective in terms of like what you saw in them, what their junior career was, and what their career has been since then, what they brought to the team. But before we go there, I got these guys talking about you a bit. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Okay.
So Quade, reached out to Quade and he said, Hybl helped. Here we go. Hybl helped me believe in myself because he believed in me. I came into school very raw and didn't know much about anything about big-time golf. You learn very fast with a leader like him. He's very engaged with all his players and helps each in different ways. He's a huge team guy. It didn't feel like I was on a golf team with the competition aspect. I think that comes from his football background with his dad and his brother. He's just a guy you want to be your leader. He's easy to follow and makes everyone work harder.
Wow. Yeah, that's special. I was fortunate, COVID was tough for all of us, but one of the best things that ever happened during COVID was I got another year with Quade Cummins, and 6 years he was with us.
Wow.
And a guy's senior year, his fourth year, can be tough because they know the schedule. They've done it so many times. It's like, they're ready to move on. They've got senioritis. I mean, you guys can remember, being young, and it's like, okay, I'm ready to move on. And guy was with us for 6 years, and until that last putt was holed, he gave everything he had, and super emotional. I couldn't ask for a better representative for our program than a guy like that. He's been unbelievable and still is. I mean, he and I we text each other, almost every week still, to every other week, and keeping up with each other. I give him grief all the time. He gives us grief. What's wrong with the boys? Why aren't we? He knows how to give me the needle, but he also knows how to really love on our guys, and he'll call them immediately whenever we win a golf tournament or whatever the case may be. The guy is a program guy.
And I think you mentioned this. I don't know if this is true or not. You can confirm. Had he not played outside Oklahoma when you recruited him, or I think of someone else?
Yeah, no, that is him. He didn't.
Okay.
He had never really played outside the state of Oklahoma. Never played in AJGA. Yeah, I mean he dominated the state of Oklahoma, and there's something to be said for that. Learning how to win. He kind of did it his way. He came in here hitting a nice draw, nice little Oklahoma low draw, and by the time he left, he left here hitting a cut, which we felt like was the right move for him, and he worked really hard on that part of his game and keeping it more in play. And I'm telling you, this year he did a great job because he keeps learning. I mean, that's our goal as golfers, right? Is to keep learning and growing. And when he left, I mean, he's a Walker Cupper his last year, and he was extremely good. But everybody, when you turn professional, you go through the ebbs and flows of something different, right? You don't just immediately go get in this locked in world. It's like you're looking around again. It's kind of almost like you're a freshman, right? And you have to own your game, but you're still going to be changing things up because you're seeing different golf courses. You're trying to manage, who you are as a professional. And he went through the same thing, just like they all go through. And anyway, but he's about to be on the PGA Tour, and he won't go away. I'm just telling you, his long term success will continue to thrive because he will look up underneath every rock to make sure that he's gaining on the next guys. And I put a lot of value in that with players.
Yeah. And I do think there's a lesson or takeaway here for folks that are listening. Like, I think there is a perspective when it comes to like tournament selection that they're always maybe hyper focused on what they're missing out on, or like, oh, this kid that's ranked ahead of me is going to this tournament. I need to be going to this tournament. Well, here's a guy with a lot of raw talent, was winning a ton locally, caught your eye, and he's on PGA Tour next year. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, that has to be super rewarding for you to be with him in this journey for 6 years and everything, since he left school, just to see the growth and the progress that, as a professional.
I mean, yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, that's the stuff that fills my cup as much as anything right now. And I just love seeing these grown men become, what they want to become. And it's really special. He got married to a great girl. They live up in Edmond at Oak Tree. We've got a great group of guys that play up at Oak Tree quite a bit. So they have big games, and they come down and mess around with our guys all the time. With our new facility that we're about to kind of wrap up here in the next couple of months, I think our former players are going to be down a lot, especially in the off-season wintertime. And So yeah, I'm fortunate to be able to have had guys like that, guys like Brad Dahlke, Max McGreevy, Charlie Saxon, a lot of these Oklahoma kids, Logan McAllister, that have really done a great job. I mean, right now, Drew Goodman's about to finish up. He's an Oklahoma kid. Ryder Cowan, I think, has a chance to become one of the best players that's ever played here if he keeps progressing. And it's our elite junior golf in Oklahoma, even though there's maybe not quite as many, from a depth perspective as other states. It's been pretty good. It's been really good for us, and our Oklahoma kids they like coming to our place, and I feel like they've been able to thrive.
Yeah, that's great. Well, speaking of Max, I got a couple words from Max as well. Another guy heading back to the PGA Tour. So he says, Coach Hybl is probably the main reason why I have had so much success in golf. He creates a mentality and grittiness that I think is hard to find in a coach. At least for me, he did such a great job of critiquing and finding my flaws and not necessarily making me feel bad about them, but pushing me to make the changes I needed. Every player has their own strengths, and I just feel like he has a way of harnessing those strengths of his players and turning them into such powerful tools for each guy. He's tough, but he does everything with so much love. It's just hard not to want to do everything he says. I always wanted to go to battle for him, and that bled into wanting to go to battle for our team always. He put in the work, and he was always going to be by your side, whether it was good or bad. He just has had such a lasting impact, not only on my golf game, but my life, and I couldn't be more thankful for him. I mean, that's got to be extremely rewarding as a coach to hear something like that.
Yeah, man, you're crushing me tonight, Jim.
Well, yeah, I mean, and if folks are, he was second in Korn Ferry. So he was on a tour, I think, in 2022, 2023, lost his card, went back to Korn Ferry, won twice this year. He just won in Japan just like a few weeks ago,
and then he followed
got
up
his tour card.
Yeah, and he followed up with a win out of Pebble Beach at the TaylorMade event too. The next week after. So the guy's traveled all over the world now. He's a world traveler. He's been successful at every level. Max is he's as gritty as they come. He's a warrior. He's got. I've told this to McGraw. I think he even put it maybe in his book. He's got a heart of a lion, and I'll just never forget when I go back to the recruitment of him. Max, I mean, he'll tell you. I mean, you watch him on the driving range. He's not going to be a guy on the PGA Tour that you're going to go pick out of the lineup. It doesn't always look that pretty, but when you watch him play, he knows how to play the game of golf. He knows how to capitalize on momentum. He can go make 7, 8, 9 birdies in a round, which is a gift. Not everybody can do that. And similar to Quade in a way, he's not going to take no for an answer. He's going to get the job done. And I've always said that I want to go find as many Max McGreevys as I can find, and they are hard to find. I'm going to tell you, they are really, really difficult to find because they don't come along like that. And his freshman year, the guy, he sat next to me on every airplane, on every bus ride that we had. He was just trying to soak it in, and I wore him out. He got in so much trouble in his first couple of years because he's a little immature punk that needed to be whipped into shape, and we had so many just awesome but terrible moments all at the same time, and we grew together and we loved each other, and the crescendo was exactly the way it needed to happen in his very last tournament, and he's winning the national championship for us. And I mean, it was just amazing. I mean, the growth that he had from his freshman year to his senior year was incredible. From a golf game perspective, we went down to a San Antonio 54-hole event right during the middle of springtime or towards the end of spring. This is when my team was starting to click, and Max goes 54 holes, no bogey, wins the golf tournament. And, it was just like he couldn't have done that. Even the year before he couldn't have done that. And that's what I like to see. The moments that I try and capture as coach is being able to see these guys, make those leaps and bounds. Sometimes it takes a year or two, maybe 3, 4 years, but then you see it happen, handling their emotions and making the right choices. and understanding what that looks like. So anyway, I could go on and on about Max. He was amazing. He's going to crush it this year, by the way, because he keeps figuring out who he is as a golfer, and he's winning more and more. So don't be surprised if he doesn't have a great year this year. Going back, very similar road that Abe Answer had. Abe got on the big tour, lost his card, goes and dominates on the Korn Ferry Tour, gets his tour card back, and for the next 4 or 5 years, he was a top 20 player in the world. So Max is kind of trending towards some of that same stuff there.
Yeah. All right. You mentioned Heart of a Lion. I'm going to bring up one guy. He might actually be a Lion. And you talked about Quade being with you for 6 years and Max having this long-term relationship. This is a guy you only had for 1 year, so I think this might be a little bit obvious. So Chris Gotterup, transferred from Rutgers, was just an absolute world beater his 1 year with the Sooners. But he said, Coach Hybl is the man, plain and simple. The second I went on my visit there, I knew it was a perfect fit. Although I was only there for a year, he treated me like he knew my whole life and really understood how to push me and make me the best player I could be. For some reason, I felt like every week I was going to win and the team was going to win, and he brought that out of us. He brought the dog and ultimate competitor out of me while also keeping it light and also so much fun to play for him. I owe Coach a lot, but I'm grateful for our relationship and a sounding board that I feel like I can use in all aspects of my life.
Man, that's good stuff. I'm actually going to meet up with Chris this week. He's done a nice job as a pro golfer, trying to keep us in the loop, keep me in the loop of what's going on. You know, when they leave us, it's something that probably doesn't get talked enough about. Just if you're coming from a team kind of like ours, where it's so much about the team, when they leave, that they start missing that pretty quickly. And so we still try and wrap our arms around these guys as much as we can whenever they leave us. And that's a big part of their next journey, is making sure that their team that they go into, that they're able to have the right people around them. And Chris is actually going to come down this week, and I think we're going to talk through and work through some of his game. He was a crazy great talent. We only got him for a year. Here's an interesting story. We lose the final match against Pepperdine in 2021. Okay, one of my best friends, Michael Beard, he beats us, and you know, you don't want to lose, but if I was going to lose, it'd be to that guy. He's one of my best buds, and we're both recruiting Chris Gotterup. Okay, we fly home Thursday evening. We get done. We fly in at 6:00 into OKC. And at 6:20, I'm picking up Chris Gotterup at OKC Airport. I mean, that's how quick our world kind of changes, wow. Especially the portal. You know, it's kind of a weird situation and whatnot. But he spent a day with us, and then he went out to Pepperdine the next day. So we played that match. He got to watch it. They beat us, but we beat them in the recruiting game, I guess, a little bit. And Chris decided to come to our place, and it was a match made in heaven. I mean, the guy came in, and I've said this a million times. He would make, it doesn't matter what sport he plays, he would make any locker room be better. I don't care if it's hockey or football or what. I mean, he's a guy's guy. He's so much fun to be around. He's funny. He works hard. He kind of throws you off because he wants to be, you know, Jersey cool. But I promise you, the dude knows how to work. And we saw that in him. You know, he was only with us for 10 months, but he was a great driver of the golf ball when he was here. You know, hitting it, he hits it a mile, but he also hit it
melts it. Yeah.
He also hits it really straight. And you know, his wedge work was just okay. And I know it's something that he's been working on, you know, in his professional time. His putting was probably a little bit better than what he gave himself credit for, but he hits the ball. He hit it so good. And, you know, he's the Haskins Award winner. And those don't come along, you know, very much. And he had an incredible year that year for us. And we won about every golf tournament as a team too that year. It was a fun year. And just can't thank him enough for spending some time. I mean, a guy packing up from Jersey, from Rutgers, coming to our place. And now he's, Oklahoma is kind of home for him. He lives up at Oak Tree with the boys. And he still goes back to Jersey, but he's really solidified himself as being an Okie.
Yeah, and he got his first win right on the tour. He won the Myrtle Beach tournament this past summer.
Yeah, he did, and if you talk to him, he drove it great that week. And I would say this past year, the thing it's probably let him down the most was his driver. So he's got to, we talk about that quite frequently about making your assets, be even better than what you've ever had them. If you're going to be the best driver of the golf ball, on your college golf team, let's go try and be the best driver of the golf ball in the country, right? Same thing with any area of your game, and Chris was like that in school, and so I'm hoping he can kind of get back to this year where everybody looks up and goes, "This Gotterup, he knows how to hit that driver."
The one thing I wanted to ask you about, because I don't think that you've taken a lot of transfers historically. Like, you kind of stick with your guys. Like, was it because of the locker room presence and just like a great guy to be around that you thought that you could add to the dynamic of bringing this guy in for a year?
Yeah, we had hit the portal the year before with Jonathan Brightwell out of UNCG, and he came in and he was a second team All-American. Chris was the benefactor of us having a great success story. This was post-COVID, where there was guys with 1 year of eligibility kind of doing this, grad transfers, right?
Mm-hmm.
The transfer situation, a guy leaving after a year or two, I'm not as big of a fan of just in general, unless it's just a special circumstance. But these guys were grad transfers, Jonathan Brightwell and Chris Gotterup, and we just had good momentum with John, and just felt like we needed to give it a shot. And funny enough, I didn't really know that much about Chris, but during COVID, I actually played in the Sunnyhanna Amateur. And in the practice round, there was a guy that kept hitting into us. Some guy, like, I'm good buddies with the tournament director, and he came out. John Yerger's his name. Known John forever because I've played in their tournament so many times. And John comes up to me and on the practice round, I'm like, "Hey, who's this guy that keeps hitting into us? This guy is hammering it." He's like, "Yeah, he's a Big Ten Player of the Year. His name's Chris Gotterup, whatever." And so I didn't really think anything about it. Well, sure enough, whenever Chris hopped in the portal, John, who's an LSU guy, he texted me and said, "Hey, remember that kid that was hitting it so far? Chris Gotterup, he's in the portal. You might want to check him out." So it was actually from John where I got because I'm not sitting there logging into the portal to try and figure out who's going in there and who's not, and it just, like I said, it was kind of a match made in heaven. Whenever he came in on his visit, you and I talked a little bit about this in our last podcast about, when a guy comes in, it's really important for us to feel it's a two-way street. It's not just the kid and it's not just the coach. It's everybody involved. And man, when Chris came in, I was like, golly, we got to get this guy. He is dynamic. He is fun. You could tell he's going to be a dog. He's got that hard jersey about him that's real, and I loved it. I mean, he brought a new dynamic to us. I like feeling like we've got some swag in certain spots, and he certainly brought that too. And I felt like when he was with us that we were pretty unbeatable at times, and he felt the same way, I believe.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so you guys the train just keeps rolling, right? Because I did want to shift gears and talk about your current squad. You guys had a fantastic fall. You won 3 times. I think the one thing that I think about your teams historically are just super, super deep. And, you never know exactly who the best 5 are going to be or who's going to play, but you guys know that you guys are going to show up to win. And I think there's a perfect example, like your last tournament in Hawaii, you guys shot like 42 under as a team, and you brought 2 individuals, and they finished first and second in the tournament. That had to be pretty wild, but just like that speaks volumes about the depth that your number 6 and 7 guys can go up and actually show up and win a tournament. So like, what's your general thoughts about the fall and just like the squad you have going into the spring?
Well, I mean, I love everything about this squad right now. Our leadership from our older guys has been fantastic. Our guys right in the middle are doing exactly what we need them to do. And our young guys have been dynamic and talented, and they're hard workers, and they're showing us a lot. So I like kind of all three of those areas when it comes to the different layers of our team. Drew Goodman didn't even play for us in the last event. He was, he's arguably one of our best players, if not our best player. He got a little banged up in his wrist. We decided to leave him at the house because he needed. We took 30 straight days off, and which he's never done in his life. He's a bona fide, probably the hardest worker I've ever been around, and so he needed that, just kind of a healthy recovery from some strong tendonitis. But when we take individuals, going back to that, I mean, I don't bring individuals to come out and finish 30th. I'm bringing them because I'm hopefully giving them an opportunity. We pride ourselves in trying to give our guys as many opportunities as anybody in the country when it comes to extra spots. So don't squander that opportunity. I mean, we just were talking about you're one guy away. Well, same thing. You're one tournament away as a player. You're one tournament away. Jackson Dow, fifth-year senior, who's played for us quite a bit, but we've always been waiting for him to kind of pop through, and he goes out and wins the golf tournament. And to be honest with you, he and I talked the week of qualifying. He wasn't in that great of a spot, but in that seventh slot, I chose him, and I called him. I said, "Hey, do you know why I'm taking you?" And because he didn't even know I was taking a seventh guy, I kind of threw it out last minute. And he goes, "No, not really," because he knew that he had just, not looked very good. I said, "Well, I'm still planning on you being a part of our success this springtime, and I need you to go out and not finish 32nd. You know, go put something together and get on the good side of momentum that we're talking about." And he makes a 25 footer on the last hole to win the golf tournament over his freshman counterpart that he's actually playing that same day with, Clark Van Galen, really talented freshman out of California. And so anyway, I mean, we're always looking for it, right? I mean, for any junior golfer out there that's listening, or parents, I mean, and it doesn't mean it's always got to be at the biggest and the best tournaments. I mean, some of our best moments as a college golf team have actually happened in some lesser than type events, and our guys get some confidence from it, and all of a sudden you get rolling, right? I mean, the Hawaii event, the field's not very good. It's the weakest field we'll probably play in all year long. But it's still one of those things that you're trying to pick up momentum and work on your game. And are you trying to become the best player that you can become? Because that's the goal. So many of us are still worried about the rankings. We're worried about, where do we fit and how do I get this invite? And it's like the ultimate goal is, can I be better when I'm 25? Can I be better when I'm 30? And I mean, because fortunately for most of us, not me, I got bum elbows, but most of us get a chance to keep playing. And the goal is to keep, on this trajectory. Sometimes it feels like this, but as long as you're still moving forward,
Sure.
upward, I think that's the goal. And my goal as a coach is to try and get these guys to play golf, their best golf of their life, when they're 18, 19, 20, 21. And I feel like the quicker we can get them to playing like a 30-year-old, that's kind of my goal, my job as a coach, is to try and get these guys to learn at a quick pace to where they actually sit back and go, I'm grizzled in my thoughts and my emotions, and I know that I'm prepared to go attack the golf course and go make good things happen instead of worrying about bad things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really awesome and really instructive. I think one guy I wanted to mention on your current team, because I've seen him play, I've seen him in action, and he's on the Walker Cup practice squad, Jace Summey. I think if there's any guy that sort of encapsulates what the OU program is about, like I just think like this bulldog mentality.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Jace Summey. I mean, he's kind of built like a bulldog,
Yeah, he is.
but also like he's just a fantastic putter, makes birdies in bunches. Like he can go super low, and he's also a great kid. Like it has to be awesome to have a guy like Jace on the squad.
Oh, he's great. He's a great leader. He's not super loud or verbal. He's finding his role there when it comes to leadership. But what he does day in, day out is a bona fide leader. He works his tail off. He's in it through and through. He is a Sooner, which makes it that much more awesome for us, being his coaches, knowing that, his whole family, basically was kind of raised here in Oklahoma, and they just live and breathe what Oklahoma Sooners is all about. And I mean, he just is willing to lay down his life for Oklahoma golf. And him going out on the practice squad this week for the Walker Cup was incredible experience for him. He texted me right when he got done. He said, "I got to make this team. I want to make this team, and I know that I can do it." And his belief continues to rise more and more. And by and large, he's considered a ball striker. He makes putts though. He's a nice putter. As a matter of fact, if we have a 6-footer to win a national championship, I probably want him hitting that putt from 6 feet. Um, his short game needs to keep working, which he'll do that. He's going to Australia for the Masters of the Amateur. Him and Ian Gilligan, they're partnering up. They're
Cool.
going over to Australia here in 2 weeks. So anyway, he's awesome. He does a great job. He's a hard worker, and can't speak anything but great stuff about Jay Summy and the leadership that he provides for us.
Yeah, I don't know if I got this from him or it might have been his dad. But you guys fell just short of match play last year, and I think Jace felt like a lot of it was on his shoulders. But I think we talked about like the setback in 2016 that led into the success in 2017. That leadership and leading by example that you mentioned, I think Jace sort of rallied the team around. Okay, like let's get after it. Like we don't want that feeling again. And it sounds like he's kind of leading by example and bringing the team along, and maybe that's the thing that leads you guys into success this upcoming year.
There's no doubt. I mean, him and Drew set the tone at our team retreat, and they both basically said, "Listen, we're going to make sure that it doesn't come down to one shot, and you better hop on board or you're going to get left behind." They both basically said that, and that's when you know that you've got a great team in the making, is when your players are doing that type of conversing and leadership, because as a coach, they expect to hear that from coaches. But when your actual current players are saying things like that and are willing to put in the work, that's where true leadership comes in.
Yeah. Well, Coach, you've been awesome with your time. I'm ready to run through this wall right here. If I had 5 years of eligibility and like 8 strokes off of my scoring average, I'd be ready to commit to play for OU. You could just tell just like your passion for your guys and like this program that you've built, like we said, brick by brick. It's just, like I said, this train is rolling, but it's only rolling because of everything that you've done leading up into this point. The Hall of Fame induction, well deserved, but I think like you've got, I think you're maybe at the midpoint of your career in terms of, what could potentially be ahead of you guys. So I'm expecting big things for you this spring and wish you the best of luck. And I just really appreciate the time, your just willingness to share with us.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks. And for spreading the word for everybody out there, because I know you probably have quite a bit of junior golf and junior golf parents, and just know that there's always that great hope out there, that you're one tournament away, and it's special that we're part of this game. I can't thank you enough because I've been able to be around good people like you guys my entire life. And, like I was saying, our program has been built off of these other people. Of course, I've been the head golf coach, but man, we have had so many great people, and just really thankful for what the University of Oklahoma has been, has allowed us to be able to do.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Coach, really appreciate the time. And like I said, we'll really be rooting for you this spring. Andrew Lewis, welcome back to the Angle of Attack with Andrew Lewis.
Hello, Jim.
How's it going?
It's going good, man. Everything's great.
So Andrew Lewis, the 2024 North Texas PGA Teacher of the Year. We wanted to cover a topic which I think is probably near and dear to your heart, coaching in North Texas. We're here in the winter months. Pretty crummy conditions in North Texas. Still tournament golf still going on pretty much year round up here. I imagine you've got clients that are struggling in the condition, struggling in the wind per se. But the good news is they have exposure to this wide range of conditions. But like, how are they coming to you with questions about like, how do I handle this? Or are they just basically complaining about lamenting these conditions?
Yeah, this is one of the things that I think is unique to not just North Texas, but this area, Oklahoma, Louisiana, is one, we have Bermuda grass, so it dies this time of year. And two, we get a lot worse wind and cold temperatures. And generally speaking, when it's cold, the wind is out of the north. And a lot of the golf courses down here are not designed for a north wind. And a lot of the kids have never played these golf courses in north winds. And so it's just a recipe for playing your worst golf. And I think that's the thing that I see is these kids, they're coming off. I mean, it was like 80, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and now it's, 55 blowing 20. So, your scoring average is going to get worse because even if your skills are good, you're just not going to shoot the same scores when you have bad conditions. I think that one of the pictures I always remember is when Tiger's at the British Open, he's like hiding behind his bag and he shoots like an 80 something. I'm like, that's a typical December or January day in Dallas. And so, I have some HSOs about like kids, side topic, but like kids playing here in those bad months where like kids in Florida and California aren't having to deal with that for the most part. And those are the kids that you're ranked against. So generally speaking, I'm advising a lot of kids to like avoid playing tournament golf if the weather looks terrible. Last year, Cameron played an event. It was Joseph was actually there. It was 30 degrees, blowing 20 to 25 all day. Like it was awful. And of course, there was like a few kids that broke 80. So yeah, a lot of kids are coming with it. I would say just to kind of hop into strategy. So one is, generally speaking, this time of year, the grass is just bad. And so if you're someone who practices like short game and you give yourself really, really nice lies, like you are going to get absolutely roasted when it comes to playing winter golf because there is no grass. You're literally hitting off tight Bermuda down here or just mud, like physically mud. I posted a video on socials yesterday about hitting out of this mud because a kid, speaking of what you just said, Jim, he came to me going, I would have won this weekend. He finished second if I would have known how to hit out of these lies. And so I think that's kind of the start. I mean, you guys play winter golf. I mean, don't you like struggle with chipping for about a couple months after the winter's over?
Yeah, for sure. No, it's really interesting because I think if you feel like you're bulletproof because you've figured out these strategies, these winning strategies, then you can actually go into one of these tournaments with confidence, right? Because like everybody has to play more or less under the same conditions, the same wind. But if you sort of embrace the opportunity to practice those kind of crummy conditions and you've got a blueprint or, a map for success, working with your swing coach, that can lead to tournament success. You don't necessarily have to avoid them, right? Necessarily.
No, you don't need to.
Yeah.
No, but if you're not out there finding solutions, like I did with that player yesterday of going like, okay, what am I going to do when I have to add loft and I am into the green and it's mud? And I can't bank it because I'm banking it into a wet spot. So there's no way it's going to shoot for it. And I know I have to hit a high shot. That just requires a lot of skill, but also a lot of reps, like doing it well so that you actually believe that when you're in that situation, you'll be able to, hit the ball in the air. So the other one that, gets really, really tough is when you get windy conditions down here because we have wind in the summer and the spring, but it really, really is bad in the winter and early months of next year. And so, when you haven't played in it in a while, especially in the summer, you just get a little bit rusty on decision making, and it really, really starts to expose your ball striking. So shots that are a little off center or a little thin or a little heely, like really, really get eaten up by the wind. And so one, it really puts a premium on ball striking. Like if the most important time to hit it well is in the winter, which is obviously the hardest time because of the conditions and the grass. But then two, you really have to start calculating wind very, very differently. Not only with that, but the cold temperatures. Like it really is becoming like a professor on the golf course. To where if you obviously had a caddy, like that would be helpful. You have to kind of put this caddy hat on because you're having, let's just do an example. So let's say it's 160 yards just to the middle of the green and it's 45 degrees and it's blowing, 20 miles an hour into your face. That shot realistically is playing 185 yards. And so, obviously kids hit shots that they hit their 8-iron because they normally hit their 8-iron that ends up 20 feet short. And now they're chipping short of the green and it's muddy. And then they just end up making a double and they really didn't necessarily hit a bad shot. And so, getting in a habit of coming up with like exact yardages, formulas for finding these solutions, so that you're choosing a shot that increases the likelihood of it turning out okay, is really what starts to save you, because you don't have to go shoot 64 to win. The weekend score that won this weekend was 2 under over 27 holes. That's not very, very low. I think 1 over was tied for second. So I mean, if you can just make a bunch of pars in these situations, you're likely gonna climb up the leaderboard.
Let me ask you this about like just a really, really strong crosswind on a hole off the tee. Is there a strategy for that other than just like aim, 60 yards left, or is there a way to like shape a shot like into the wind? Like generally, what's a winning strategy there?
So first off, on crosswinds, you generally want to ride fade winds and hold draw winds, and there's a couple reasons. One, it's very, very easy to hit a fade up against a right to left wind for a right-handed player and hit like a straight shot, but the opposite is very, very difficult for someone who's right-handed who the wind is off the left. And the reason is because if you try to draw a shot when the wind is off the left, I mean, if you think about a draw starts right of target. So you're already starting it right. And if that ball doesn't curve left, which if it's 15 or 20 off the left, most likely it's just going to start right and it's going to stay right and get out of control. So generally speaking, crosswinds, rule of thumb would be hold draw winds and then cut the fade winds, like let the ball ride. Now, specifically to the one shot you're talking about, which is very, very difficult, is to hit a fade with a fade wind off the tee. So my strategy would be one is to try to hit as straight of a shot as you can, not through like trying to draw it against the wind, but imagine that you're on the driving range and you're just trying to hit a very, very straight tee shot. That's the swing that you would need to do, but obviously the ball's going to move right because of the wind. What I see is when someone tries to hit a tee shot with the wind, they hit too much of a fade. So if I hit too much of a fade and the wind is off the left, now I start curving my driver 40, 50, 60 yards left. Versus take a guy who aims at the left edge of the fairway and says, I'm going to hit my straight shot and let the wind just move it. That would be two very, very different ways of doing it. The other way would be to hit the wussy shot, which is the one that I choose to hit, which is a very, very teed down, very choked down. Don't let the ball get in the air. And this would be a good strategy if the hole is tight or if it's not long, because at the end of the day, you just need to get the ball in play, and there's no premium on hitting it far on like a 400-yard par 4. And so you need to have some sort of strategy for those type of wins. And then if the wind's off the right with your tee shot, you can either ride it or hold it. It's much more simple, especially if you're doing a teed down version, because if you're doing a teed down version of a drive, generally speaking, those are going to be cut shots. It's very hard to hit a teed down version of a draw. Just like when you see, Bubba Watson hit a driver off the deck, it's almost always a cut. It's very easy to cut your driver when it's teed down low, but very hard to draw.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, let me ask you this. Maybe it's related to the tee down, but like, let's imagine a scenario where the weather is just biblical, right? Wind, rain, just miserable conditions to be out there. Are there mental strategies or even like course management strategies where you can get it around, still post a decent number and actually have some chance at success?
Yeah, I think you go into that type of round knowing that you're not going to shoot like a career low. You're probably going to make a lot of bogeys. You're probably going to luck into a couple birdies, but it would be like my mental strategy for the day would be, or my mental affirmation would be like, limit the damage, choose the easiest shot. If you have a 4-iron in hand and it's 40 degrees blowing 30, you're not going to hit the green, right? That's not being negative. That's just realistic. So almost like, aiming for the shot that is likely going to end up in an easier spot, like not missing short-sided downwind to a downslope. Like there's no chance of you getting that up and down. So yeah, I think being very realistic about what would be some good realistic, process and outcome goals for the day would likely limit the damage. And I think too, if you get off to a rough start being like 3 over through 5, but that you're probably going to be struggling to break, 78, that gives you some freedom too, because you're not going into it thinking that you're going to shoot 2 under or even par, because it's just very unlikely that it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. Sort of also, I think if you embrace this opportunity, or even, in some ways, like playing into that experience, like those end up being the most memorable tournament experiences. To play in these absolute miserable conditions, and the opportunity, if you sort of embrace it and maybe have fun with it, you probably have a leg up over the rest of the field that's just like lamenting their lot in life.
Yeah, I mean, everybody gets in those events, and the first thing they start doing is start complaining. If you can be the one kid not to complain, I think it may be hard to be like excited to go play it. But if you can look at it as a challenge, and that, when the conditions are nice, anybody can play well. But when the conditions are poor like that, you're probably eliminating half the field just based on, them not wanting to be there, or them not handling the conditions mentally very well. So yeah, I mean, I do think that, from an outcome standpoint, up the leaderboard standpoint, it is a way to kind of finish up there if you can just have some semblance of ball control, and then have a better than average attitude relative to the field.
Yeah, and think about this. Like, I know people have been in these shoes where you're, say, 10 strokes back going into the final round. You should be hoping for these types of conditions. Like, it's an opportunity where maybe half the guys ahead of you, like you said, they complain and they basically take themselves out of the tournament based on their mental makeup. And now you've kind of shrunken, the opportunity to win, and it's going to be tougher for the leaders to kind of run away with it.
Yeah. It's a good idea to put yourself in these situations in practice. A lot of times, let's say it's really, really bad weather, no one's at the golf course, maybe it's not even open. Finding days like that to sometimes go play is a good idea, just to kind of see, like, for example, what kind of clothes do you want to wear? Do you have the type of gloves you need? Then you can start to work a little bit on some of these shots that we're talking about, because it is a very different style of golf. You're not doing a whole lot of stock driving range shots. You're doing a lot of 3/4 shots, punch shots, lots of curve, keeping it low. A sustained amount of time in that can really kind of mess up your stock shots, so I wouldn't be doing it a ton. But it is good to have that skill of just being able to grind. This is the definition of a grinder, someone who can like get through events like this.
Yeah,
Not Tiger
great.
Woods. Not Tiger Woods at the British.
Yeah.
When he won the British, it was always nice out.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But Andrew, I think this is really helpful, and hopefully people, can look at these opportunities and sort of embrace them with a slightly different mindset based on some of your observation. Really
Yeah, I think
appreciate
they can. I hope they do.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right, man. See ya.
The Driven Golf Podcast is produced by Joseph K. If you like this episode, like it, subscribe, pass it on to a friend who might be interested. It really helps us out a lot. We'll be back in a couple weeks with the next episode. Until then, remember, in this great game, the journey is the gift. Enjoy the journey.
One swing, one shot, one move. Only takes one. Let's get it. Yo, it started with a call, a long drive down I-35, a Dairy Queen stop, moments etched in my mind. An answer to the question, a program redefined. Let's dig it out the dirt, time to get into the grind. Only one guy away from flipping the script, from ranked 100 plus to championship grips. Recruiting grinders, not the ones on the list. Found the diamonds in the dust, yeah, the ones they dismissed. Doki pledged at 12, sooner born, sooner bred. Quade locked in for 6, soaked up every word I said. One recruit could shift the room, yeah, that's all part of the plan. One guy away from greatness, understand where we stand. It only takes one. From Athens to Norman, Hybl molding the clay. It only takes one. One step, one call, only one guy away. It only takes one. Iron sharpens iron, in the dirt every day. It only takes one. Boomer Sooner Nation, yeah, remember the name. It only takes one. It only takes one. It only takes one. It only takes one. One tourney away, man, that's all that it takes. Go from barely on the roster to raising the stakes. Confidence is currency, momentum's the bank. Shooting 65s and better, steady raising the rank. Same story for McGreevy, struggled then he surged. No bogeys in attorney, clean scorecards emerged. Hybl says be grizzled, a hard lesson for sure. Climbing up the ranks, now he's back on the tour. First match, play heartbreak, then a champion's flow. Lost in 16 and 17, they put on a show. And Sugar Grove, fully locked on, go every hole. It's that bounce back hustle when the pressure explodes. It only takes one. From Athens to Norman, Hybl molding the clay. It only takes one. One shot, one putt, just one tourney away. It only takes one. Iron sharpens iron, watch our doubters decay. It only takes one. Sooners on the rise, these homies don't play. One shot in the dark, but the target's in sight. Pressure bust pipes or it sharpens a knife. The grind never stops, it's the fuel and the flame. One swing, one stroke, yo, remember the name. It only takes one. From Athens to Norman, Hybl molding the clay. It only takes one. One shot, one putt, just one moment away. It only takes one. Iron sharpens iron, watch our doubters decay. It only takes one. Sooners on the rise, these homies don't play. It only takes one. 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 One swing, one swing, one swing, one swing.